Hi, I'm Allie Mitchell, the Program Director for Arkansas A+. In this video, I will be demonstrating one of the many ways to facilitate a conversation about an artwork. During this demonstration, Alyssa and Sally will act as participants or students. After the demonstration, I'll share a little bit more about the framework that I'm using to structure this conversation and ways that you might use this with your students. Take a few moments to look at this artwork, Maya's Quilt by Faith Ringgold. It is a quilt made of acrylic paint on canvas and dyed and pieced fabric pieces, and was created in 1989. Feel free to pause the video at any point if you would like some extra time to look at the artwork. Now that everyone has had a chance to take a good look at the artwork, let's talk about it. What's going on in this artwork?
I see a person in the middle who looks like she's walking down a trail in either a garden or maybe the woods.
Yeah, she's got an amazing dress on.
Okay, so we're seeing this woman walking down maybe a path in the woods with this beautiful bright colored dress on. What do you see that makes you say all that?
Well, I see like behind the woman this strip of brown that looks like it has sunlight and shadows. And so I'm thinking that that's the trail. And there is foliage around her, but because of the way the light and shadow look on the trail, it looks like there's an expanse of foliage, not just in this foreground part. So that's what makes me say it's the woods.
Great. So you're thinking that this kind of expands beyond just this little snapshot that we're seeing here. Mm-hmm. And there's some depth to it as well, with the trail kind of leading backward toward wherever this figure has come from. What more can you find?
The words, I can't tell what they say, but they seem to be on either side of her.
Okay, great. So we're seeing words on either side.
I'm thinking the artist that created the quilt, maybe the words have something to do with the figure. I mean, they're obviously relevant because they're central to the visual imagery of the quilt.
Great. So maybe there's some relationship between the words and the figure, and obviously the words are impactful because of their inclusion in the quilt, right?
And because they look like they're handwritten.
And they look handwritten, yeah. It looks like someone took the time to really paint that onto the quilt, or write that onto the quilt. Mm-hmm. So what more can we find here?
So the shapes on the outer side are really striking. They seem to be abstract flowers or lines, but they're really fun and festive.
So there's a lot of bright color throughout the whole quilt, but then you see some great pattern around the border of the quilt, let's call it, yeah.
And that makes me wonder, like, because the center of the quilt looks painted, and the words look handwritten, but then we move out to this pieced fabric part. It makes me wonder if any of the fabrics were either hand dyed or hand painted, because you've got so much of what feels like the hand of the artist in the central part of the quilt, but then less so as you move out. So is there really not that hand because these are all pre-printed fabrics, or is it in fact that the artist has created some of these prints?
That's a really great point. You're noticing that in the middle towards the center of this quilt, there's a lot of the artist's hand. You can see brush strokes. You can see that the artist really took their time with creating this and writing painstakingly, likely, all of these words onto this quilt. And then as it comes out, you start to see probably purchased fabric that was pieced together to create it, so less of the artist's hand.
It kind of connects to her dress, though. They're not the same designs that are found on her dress, but they seem to recall it in some way with curved lines or just the bright colors.
So maybe there is some connection between what the figure is wearing and the prints on the outside, just in their bright, beautiful, bold colors.
Well, and that makes me wonder too what Alyssa said about the prints on the dress and the connection to the fabric in the quilt is if any of these patterns or designs are either culturally relevant or were these important fabrics in somebody's family. Like, I don't know, the person who made the quilt, if they're the same person who's in the quilt, and if these are random fabrics or symbolic fabrics. Because, like, my mom made a quilt when I was a kid out of my clothes that I had. And so that's what made me think about that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Is there some connection to the figure, or even for the artist, to some of these pieces that are on the border of the quilt in some way?
Yeah, it seems to tell a story, and I don't know what that story is, but there's definitely, it's almost a portrait of a person, but it has so many other layers as well that go out as your eye goes to the edge.
Yeah, a multi-layered portrait in so many ways. Sure. Well, thank you both for joining me in this conversation. I really appreciate your insights and you sharing with me. I now want to take just a moment to discuss visual thinking strategies, or VTS, the framework that I use to facilitate the conversation about Maya's quilt. Developed by former professor of art education and director of the graduate program at Massachusetts College of Art, Abigail Howson, and former director of education at the Museum of Modern Art, New York, Philip Yenowit. VTS is a facilitation method used in classrooms and museums across the world to look at and have conversations about artwork. Using this method, facilitators are responsible for asking 3 specific questions. What is going on in this artwork? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can you find? As participants answer the questions like Sally and Alyssa did, the facilitator will paraphrase what the participants shared before asking the next question. Additionally, when participants share information that was somehow linked, the facilitator will bring it to the group's attention. In this model, facilitators are not expected to provide additional information about the artwork. Instead, the focus is on what participants are seeing and listening to, their thoughts about the artwork. When used with students in a classroom or museum, the strategy acknowledges each participant and makes sure that they are heard by the facilitator. The strategy can help level the playing field by focusing on responses to what the students are seeing rather than relying on pre-existing knowledge to have a conversation. It's a great way to introduce the idea of talking about art with your students and get them to think more critically about what they see.